This Saturday, AEW presents its annual WrestleDream pay-per-view from the Chaffetz Arena in St. Louis, Missouri. And WrestleDream has provided the setting for several major debuts in All Elite Wrestling history, including the debut of the Rated R superstar Adam Copeland back in 2023. With that in mind, could this weekend's edition of WrestleDream provide the setting for some major debuts, and could Tony Khan have some surprises up his sleeve? In this video, we're going to let you know 5 possible major debuts that could take place this weekend at AEW WrestleDream. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of stories to get into in the world of professional wrestling, and this Saturday it is AEW WrestleDream from the Chaffetz Arena in St. Louis, Missouri. Of course, we will be live with a watch-along and a post-show here at Wrestling News 365, but WrestleDream has provided the setting for several major debuts in All Elite Wrestling history, probably most famously being Adam Copeland's arrival in All Elite Wrestling back in 2023. And with that being said, could we have several more major debuts taking place this weekend at WrestleDream? Let's get straight into today's countdown video, beginning with a possible major debut of Cedric Alexander. Could this weekend be the time that finally the Hurt Syndicate is complete in the form of Cedric Alexander becoming All Elite and joining MVP Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin? Well, it is possible. Certainly there is a match involving the Hurt Syndicate at AEW WrestleDream this coming Saturday. They're in a trios match, once again against The Demand, that being the trio of Ricochet, Bishop Corn, and Toa Liona. And we have seen this rivalry continue on in recent weeks. We've seen street fights, we've seen brawls, we've seen situations where The Demand actually cost the Hurt Syndicate the AEW World Tag Team Championships at Forbidden Door. This rivalry goes pretty deep. Now, as far as Cedric Alexander's availability for a possible debut in All Elite Wrestling, well, it is possible at the moment. Now, you might say, but didn't Cedric Alexander just arrive in TNA Wrestling? And hasn't he been involved in the TNA and WWE NXT crossover? Like, why would he then go to AEW? How would he be able to go to AEW? Well, Cedric Alexander has been working for TNA Wrestling since June, not that long ago. And despite the lack of an official signing announcement from TNA, Alexander was recently confirmed to be under contract with the company by Fightful Select. However, it wasn't a very long-term contract. Fightful Select then actually followed up their initial reporting, stating that their sources had revealed to them that Alexander's contract with TNA actually was set to expire very, very soon. Those that Fightful actually spoke to stated that he was under this short-term deal and that his contract was set to expire around the time of Bound for Glory, which of course took place this past weekend on October 12th. Now, it had been reported that TNA officials were currently hoping to re-sign Alexander to a new deal with the company. We don't know whether or not Cedric Alexander indeed did sign a new deal to stick around with TNA Wrestling, if he's without a contract, if his contract is expiring soon, if it expires this weekend. There's a lot of uncertainty and not too much information on whether he's put pen to paper on a new deal, if he intends to put pen to paper on a new deal, if he would be available to sign with AEW. There's not much known regarding that. Now, in the past, when it's been brought up the idea of Cedric Alexander rejoining his former Hurt Business stablemates in the Hurt Syndicate in AEW, there has been pushback, considering that, of course, he is married to Big Swole, and we know that Big Swole's exit from AEW was less than pleasant, with AEW President Tony Khan going onto social media to kind of defend himself when he released her at the time, stating that he actually just released her because he wasn't happy with her wrestling. And then Big Swole had some things to say about AEW, and there's been some kind of pushback going, Cedric Alexander, he's never going to go into AEW because Big Swole said things about Tony Khan, etc., etc. But as we've seen, when it comes to AEW, no bridge is truly burned, as we've seen with Andrade. Andrade was in WWE, went to AEW. The situation wasn't exactly super pleasant at the time. He was suspended at one point for backstage altercations. Then he returned, and then he was having great matches. And then AEW wanted to keep him, and then they thought they were going to keep him. Then he ended up going to WWE. Didn't work out in WWE, and now he's back in AEW. So just because stuff's happened in the past related to Cedric Alexander, not actually by his own hand, but just stuff related to him, that doesn't rule him out of a possible arrival in AEW. If Tony Khan and those that are in power in AEW think it's the right thing and they can make money off it, and they want to evolve or expand the Hurt Syndicate storyline, it would make natural sense for Alexander to come in to All Elite Wrestling. Now, when all of this chatter was going on about Alexander's contract in TNA, Fightful Sean Ross Sapp did state that whilst there are those pushing for Alexander, namely those in the Hurt Syndicate, for him to join AEW, they hadn't heard of anything of him possibly arriving in All Elite Wrestling. But once again, that doesn't mean anything. It might just be kept very much under wraps. It might have been the plan the whole time for him to have a short run in TNA and be featured on WWE television a little bit and then come over to AEW. That's why he signed a short-term deal. We ultimately don't know, but as improbable as this one seems, I don't think you can rule it out at this point, particularly considering that he may be a free agent or may very well soon be a free agent, or look, he may be sticking around with TNA and isn't going anywhere anytime soon. We'll have to wait and see. And before we move on to the next name on this countdown list, a reminder that this video is brought to you in collaboration with all of our great affiliates, and that includes NordVPN. You can see right there, if you're in the United States, you can get up to 77% off plus 3 months extra free. The link is in the video description below. It's also going to be pinned in the comments section. Now, of course, we're talking about AEW here, but actually over here in the UK, we get a pretty sweet deal when it comes to AEW content. You can watch all of your AEW content on Triller TV. That's right, you can watch AEW Dynamite, AEW Collision, and pretty much AEW's entire back catalogue is available on Triller TV. All you've got to do is get an AEW Plus subscription, which is super cheap. I think it's like $5 a month or £5. It's really not that expensive at all. And then if you're an AEW Plus subscriber, you get AEW pay-per-views at a discounted rate. In fact, I actually purchased WrestleDream when I purchased Forbidden Door. I got them bundled at a discounted rate. You can too. All you got to do is get a VPN, change your location to an international territory like here in the UK, which we get all this AEW Plus Trailer TV subscription. You can save yourself some money. And also, if you're a WWE fan, you can watch all of your WWE content as part of your Netflix subscription. So what are you waiting for? Use our link, scan the QR code, click the link in the video description below, save yourself some money, and you can also support Wrestle News 365 in the process. Next up, could we see Shayna Baszler become All Elite this weekend at WrestleDream? Now, granted, this one feels pretty unlikely, doesn't it? Shayna Baszler hasn't actually had a match since April, and she was released by WWE back in May. Well, she was informed that her contract was going to be set to expire. So on May 2nd, WWE informed Shayna Baszler that her contract was set to expire on July 31st, ending her 8-year tenure with the company, and it disbanded the faction she was in at the time, Pure Fusion Collective, on WWE television. Now, despite having been released under this 90-day non-compete clause, which again was weird because it was suggested that maybe that they were going to let her contract expire. Those details are a bit sort of few and far between. Baszler has still been affiliated with WWE. She was reported to be listed as a producer on the July 9th episode of WWE NXT, where she produced a match alongside Christopher Girard. She explained that on a Twitch stream, basically saying, look, I'm still technically under contract with WWE. It expires at the end of July. I'm around the Performance Center anyway. I always hang out there for NXT episodes. So they just said, well, if you're under contract, maybe we can find a role for you, I guess, until you're released or something like that. Now, the time has been and gone when her contract expires, and she's still been appearing on WWE television, specifically on the September 16th edition of NXT, which was the homecoming edition of the show. It's from Full Sail University, and of course, Shayna Baszler's got a lot of history with the black and gold era of NXT. Baszler made a backstage appearance in a segment encouraging Sol Ruka and Zarya to get back on the same page as a tag team. Now, again, it might just be a situation whereby she's not under contract anymore, but she's still local to the area. Maybe they're still having discussions about being a producer. We'll have to wait and see. Baszler's been pretty open, saying that she's really kind of just assessing her future and what she wants to do right now. Baszler is 45 years of age, which, now, if it was a male superstar, we wouldn't even be talking about possible retirement or anything like that. We'd be saying you've got plenty of years to go. Why should it be any different for women? And Baszler has said much the same. She's effectively said she's got to make a decision. If she decides to go down the route of being a producer with WWE, it would likely effectively end her in-ring career, and she wants to decide whether or not she wants to do that or not. Now, as I've said, she hasn't had a match at this point in about 6 months. Her last match came in April, the 17th of April to be specific, at Josh Barnett's Bloodsport over WrestleMania weekend, and she hasn't had a match since then. So there could be a situation where maybe she has decided she doesn't want to wrestle anymore. But if she does, AEW could certainly be an option. We know that Marina Shafir is actively featured on AEW programming as part of the Death Riders, and Shafir could maybe need a tag team partner. Of course, Tony Khan has announced AEW Women's Tag Team Championships, and Shafir, being a featured member of the AEW roster, could be in need of a tag team partner. Who better than her fellow Four Horsewomen stablemate in Shayna Baszler? So I don't think you can rule out the possibility. This one feels very, very unlikely. But until it's been confirmed that she's back with WWE, and at a time which AEW are looking to add female members to the roster into tag teams for this AEW Women's Tag Team Championship tournament that's going to be upcoming, I don't think you can rule out the possibility that Baszler could become All Elite. Next up, speaking of the Women's Tag Team Championships, could we see Katie Catanzaro become All Elite? Now, this is really, really interesting. Catanzaro had been with WWE for quite some time, and she'd actually been very successful in a tag team with WWE. Of course, she was teaming with Kaden Carter for about 5 years, and they won the 2021 Women's Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic. She eventually changed her name to Katana Chance. So she was known as Katie Catanzaro for a while, but she was changed to Katana Chance, a trademark situation. But they won the NXT Women's Tag Team Championships. On the main roster, they won the Women's Tag Team titles as well. So again, they were successful and holding their titles. They didn't hold it for a particularly long amount of time. They only held them for, I think it was about 40 days, 39 days before dropping them to the Kabuki Warriors. They were transferred to SmackDown at the beginning of this year, but we never really saw that much of her and Kaden Carter, and eventually they were released by WWE back in May. Now, since then, her tag team partner, actually, in Kaden Carter, has debuted in All Elite Wrestling. Recently, Lacey Lane, the former Katana Chance, made her Ring of Honor debut on the September 25th, 2025 episode of Ring of Honor Wrestling on Honor Club. She unsuccessfully challenged Mina Shirakawa for the interim Ring of Honor Women's World Television Championship. And then she debuted for AEW recently, just a week or so ago, on October 7th at Dynamite Title Tuesday. She accepted Mercedes Moné's open challenge for the AEW TBS Championship, but failed to win the title. Naturally, this has led to speculation that maybe Kacy Catanzaro could come into AEW, they could reform their tag team, and they could go after those aforementioned recently announced AEW Women's Tag Team Championships. So, on the face of it, this could be a real possibility, particularly as we ramp up getting closer to the beginning of that tournament for the AEW Women's Tag Team Championships. However, Catanzaro has been quite public, stating that she doesn't really know what she's going to do post WWE, because she recently explained to Chris Van Vliet in an interview saying that why only previously wrestling in WWE makes her situation different from others. She's not started on the indies and then could go back to the indies. She doesn't really know what she's going to do. She said, quote, "That's a good question. I'm not sure," when asked if she plans to keep wrestling. "I'm going to say I'm not sure because it could go either way. I feel like most people know right away. The second their WWE release happens, they're like, okay, I'm doing this. I think in part of it is because I didn't wrestle beforehand. I never got those experiences on the indies. People who did are like, okay, I'm going to go back to that. I know I want to do that." But she said she doesn't know. She said she did gymnastics for 4 years, had a scholarship. She then did American Ninja Warrior for 5 years. And then she went straight to the WWE from that. So she doesn't really know. But maybe Lacey Lane's debut in AEW is a precursor for Catanzaro to come in and for them to go after the AEW Women's Tag Team Championships. Maybe they could be the inaugural tag team champions. We'll have to wait and see. And next up, could Wes Lee be on his way to All Elite Wrestling? Now, recently there was a bunch of WWE NXT releases, and probably the most surprising name to be announced as departing WWE was the former NXT North American champion, Wes Lee. Now, Wes Lee, for a long period of time, was a real featured player in WWE NXT. Not so much in this sort of silver and black era of NXT on the CW, but the NXT era on USA Network, particularly that sort of, what is it, yellow and orange era? We go by colours, don't you? There's black and gold era, there's NXT 2.0, then there's NXT 3.0, I don't know. But that period of time where Wes Lee was the North American champion, after he had, the MSK had been split up because of obviously what happened with Zachary Wentz, he went on to do very, very well, of course. Now, ultimately, that was kind of derailed by an injury. He revealed that he had to have back surgery. He'd be out of action for 8 to 12 months. He'd been suffering from the back injury for some time, and there was a lot of kind of people bumming out because they thought he was going to get called to the main roster. Now, he actually made his return way, way quicker than expected regarding all of this. I think it was like, 5-6 months later, he was back. But once he came back from the back injury, it just felt like he never really got going. He did have a feud with the Rascals when they sort of crossed over into NXT, and it led to blow-off matches with Zachary Wentz, and Trey Miguel was involved in that. After that, he did some stuff with the High Rise, but he just never felt like he got back to where he was prior to the back injury. So much so that his final WWE appearance actually took place on the October 8th episode of Evolve. He had been going down to Evolve, going from one point being close to being called up to the main roster, going to Evolve, and this wasn't in a match. He was in the corner of High Rise for that one, but he was released by WWE just 2 days later on October 10th, ending his near 5-year tenure with the promotion. Now, we don't really know what the situation is regarding non-competes. If it's a normal NXT contract, he'd be on a 30-day non-compete clause. There could be a situation whereby it's been reported as a release, but like some other names that have been reported recently, they've been using the term that they've been released by WWE, but in reality, WWE has just told them, we're not going to be renewing your contract. Therefore, he could be free to go and wrestle elsewhere very, very quickly, depending on when his contract expires. There could be a situation similar to Andrade, where there is no non-compete, although Andrade El Idolo's exit from WWE was a bit different because he was fired because of wellness policy violations. So it's a case-by-case scenario. Either way, you can't rule out the possibility of, Desmond Xavier at this point, not Wesley, arriving in AEW. And the options are kind of limited post-WWE nowadays, right? It's not like he could go back to TNA. I mean, he could, and he could be signed to a TNA contract, but a lot of people are trying to maybe say that that's not maybe the best route anymore to kind of exit WWE and go back to TNA when you're affiliated with WWE and end up back on WWE television. Is that really the right way to go? Maybe he wants to branch out and go somewhere completely different, that being AEW. But it depends on what is going on when it pertains to release clauses, contract expiries, and maybe even injury status as well regarding that back injury. And finally, could WrestleDream be the location that Killer Cross and Scarlett make their AEW debuts? Now, I know every single time there's an AEW pay-per-view or a major AEW event, at the moment I feel like I'm saying, could this be the time the former Karrion Kross ends up in All Elite Wrestling? At the moment, who even knows what the situation is with Karrion Kross anymore? When he exited WWE after SummerSlam, there was a big feeling, wasn't there? His contract's not expiring. This is a work. He signed a new deal. He's very popular on social media. This is all part of an elaborate storyline, an elaborate work. It's very Brian Pillman-esque when he actually got a legitimate release from WCW to go to ECW and then to go to WWE, but to get more popular and eventually come back to WCW. Eric Bischoff was in on it. Brian Pillman was in on it. That was the plan. And then ultimately it never happened. People thought, well, it's a similar situation here. That's what's really going on. And because why would you let someone go like Karrion Kross when he did have popularity? Maybe he wasn't seen as a top star by those in power at WWE, but social media liked him, crowd reactions liked him, so you'd be thinking you'd make money there. He was selling merchandise. Why wouldn't WWE pursue that? And the way that Karrion Kross did some interviews led some people to think, oh no, there's something going on here. Now, since his exit from WWE, he has worked a few different matches. Not many. He's only worked 4 matches since leaving WWE over the summer. And it was for companies that maybe people thought were affiliated loosely with WWE, and therefore they weren't going to get too carried away like GCW or anything like that. But recently, he did do a show in New York City, which he teamed with Darby Allin, an AEW wrestler. Of course, Darby Allin wrestling this weekend at WrestleDream. He's up against Jon Moxley in an I Quit match. So, if he was still under contract with WWE, would they let him work against with an AEW talent, involving a match with Stephen Borden as well, making his AEW, obviously he's linked to AEW contracted star Sting, WWE Hall of Famer Sting. You've got JD Drake was also involved in that match, and he's with AEW still. So that did lead people to kind of go, well, that was quite an AEW-centric match. It wasn't an AEW one, but an AEW-centric match. So maybe they're kind of is a possibility there. Maybe he's not under contract. And as time goes on and kind of the buzz and luster surrounding Karrion Kross dissipates, a lot of people are starting to go, well, maybe he's actually not under contract. Maybe it was a real situation. Now, there's other sort of political issues that maybe people say, well, even if he's not under contract with WWE, him going to AEW is unlikely due to the way he exited Impact Wrestling prior to going over to WWE in 2020, and situations with Scarlett Bordeaux there at the time. It's led to people going, those people might be involved with AEW, so could that really work out? Well, he did an interview recently with Chris Van Vliet, and Kross and Scarlett actually addressed potential interest in AEW. And as they recall, and as was reported at the time, Kross previously did have a conversation with AEW and Tony Khan about possibly bringing him aboard in 2022. Reportedly, it was only for a one-off or anything like that. And in the end, he and Scarlett opted to re-sign with WWE. It led to their return there in August of 2022. But he did admit they had conversations. He said, quote, I wanted to do something bigger for Tony at the time, so we just said, let's stay in touch, and had planned to do something. There's a thing that happens when people either exit or get released from a commercialized wrestling company where, and I'm not speaking on behalf of anybody, but I just know that sometimes people freak out because the ground falls out from underneath them. Financially, they get scared. So they feel like the best thing to do, so nobody forgets about them, is sign somewhere in sort of like a semi-panic or something, or perhaps they really just want to go out there and they want to get it over with and knock it out. There's also a scenario. But they said that they never felt, pressured or anything like that. And they did express openness to going to AEW in assessing their professional future alongside Kross. Scarlett noted that the pair are hoping to rekindle their spark with WWE, especially given their number of positive memories working for the respective company. But they said wherever they land next, though, they're going to make the most of it. They said, quote, the thing about going somewhere else, it's almost like jumping from one long-term relationship into another. When you're still hoping that the connection is still there with the previous company, that they're going to do the right thing, that they're going to call, Scarlett said. If we ever go to AEW, we're going to be flying the AEW flag. That is going to be our home forever. Whatever our next company is, that's it. Right now, we're still talking about WWE the way we are. To go over there and be like, oh, we're just here to go back. We wouldn't want to do that to them. So if we go there, we're like, no, we're going to make this company the absolute best. It's true. We're going to be, and we'll do that wherever we go. So the suggestion is that if they do end up going to AEW, then it's not going to be of an effort to go back to WWE. So who knows? Maybe this will be the time. And as I've said before, if Killer Kross and Scarlett legitimately become All Elite, then I'll believe they're not under contract to WWE. As of right now, I feel like still it's anybody's guess. So there you go, guys. There are 5 possible major debuts that could take place this weekend at AEW WrestleDream. Let me know your thoughts, your reactions, your opinions, your hot takes, as always, in the comment section below. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe. A reminder, we are going to be live this weekend for an AEW WrestleDream watch-along, as well as a post-show. So be sure to join us then. And as I mentioned, I will speak for you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.